chances are you have not seen this face before, or you don't recognize this face, but you are impacted by this man and the principle and the formulas that he came up with in the early 20th century. This is Vilfredo Pareto, and he created this famous 80-20 principle that I based our inventory ordering system based on that. And one day, the story of Vilfredo Pareto, he is an avid gardener. And one day he was in his garden and realized that about 20% of his pea pods accounted for 80% of the overall peas that he had in his garden. And he went on to ask himself why that's the case. And he's an economist, so naturally he started studying other phenomena in the universe and has recognized that a lot of human activities follow the 80-20%. Human activities and also things in nature that follow the 80-20% rule. And it's the idea that 20% of the causes account for 80% of the outcome. And you can see that example in a lot of things, things like looking at criminals. 20% of criminals account for 80% of the crimes. 20% of the wealth is held by 80% of the wealth is held by 20% of people. In fact, if you're a wireless retailer, believe it or not, 20% of your doors account for 80% of your net income, and 20% of your SKUs or items account for 80% of your sales. And I actually wanted to study and test that on my stores, and I saw that my stores follow the Pareto distribution. Fascinating stuff, not exactly on the distribution, it's 80-20% is an approximation, but it follows my stores, and our sales follow the 80-20% distribution to a large part. So this session is really about how do you utilize, what are the things that you can do to help reduce your inventory while helping your availability, and focusing on the Pareto chart and how you could apply this principle into your inventory management. And this is an example of what a Pareto chart looks like. And basically, as I mentioned earlier, 20% of your SKUs or categories will account for 80% of your sales. And based on that, you can start classifying your inventory into different classes: Class A, Class B, and Class C. And so Class A right here account for 40% of your sales. So about 5% of your SKUs or your items in your inventory will account for 40% of your sales. And then the rest of the 15%, Class A plus Class B items will account for 80% of your sales. So 20% of your SKUs are going to account for 80% of your sales. And then this massive pile red right here is really the rest of your inventory, 80% of your SKUs, and they only represent 20% of your sales. And so the idea, then, you apply this principle by focusing on your Class A and your Class B items. If you're able to somehow figure out how do you maintain the availability rate, so making sure that you're improving your stock on hand or your inventory on hand of only these items, Class A and Class B, while significantly reducing your Class C items. And this is a very powerful principle that allows you to reduce inventory while helping your availability rate. And in fact, if you study your own sales and you look at your own distribution, you will see that your SKUs and activities will follow this principle. So in this particular example, these are the different categories of sales. And if you go all the way up to 80% of sales, you'll see that 20% of the items representing those sales. And so the way that I did it is Class A items are representing 40% of the sales, and then the next 40% are considered Class B items. And so not always the distribution isn't perfect. It's not 80-20% precisely. You can see here at the 20% mark, it accounted for 77% of the sales, close enough. And here, 7% of the SKUs accounted for 40%, according to chart in this principle, about 5%, 5 to 7%. It's very close enough, and it does the job and does the trick for me. So this is what I did in order to help reduce our inventory on hand while improving availability rate, ensuring that you're looking at the right inventory. And when I look at, when you're really trying to manage your inventory, in general, there's really two things that you're trying to do. You're trying to decrease your your inventory on hand, and you're trying to reduce your availability rate. And I want you to look at it from this chart perspective, where I have here on the y-axis the inventory, the cost per door, inventory cost per door, holding cost per door on a scale from 0 to $45,000. And here I have the availability rate from 0 to 100%. 100% is as good as it gets. And I kind of ended the scale at 45,000 because depending on really what industry you're in, and if you're in the prepaid segment of things, at most you're holding $45,000. And what I look at when I analyze the numbers, that I saw that stores that do below 100 boxes, you don't really need more than $15,000 worth of inventory. And stores that do 100 to 130 don't, you need about $20,000 worth of inventory. And stores that are above 150 boxes, you need about 25,000. And when you have your peak season, you could add $5,000 on that to account for the peak and increase in sales activity. But on your normal average season, this is kind of the number that I came up with. And this is a number that I came with really through trial and error by reducing the inventory on hand and helping improve it. So assuming that you're somebody that has multiple doors, and you're probably, if you're not managing your inventory actively and scientifically and utilizing the Pareto chart and the principle of the 80-20% and looking at the variability of the demand, chances are the best thing that you're going to get really follows this dark black line right here. You have a lot of inventory, and at best you're getting 80% availability rate. This is what I actually started with before we updated before we built our business intelligence solutions, and before started looking at this problem from a scientific perspective. We're getting 80% at best, and we were holding a lot of inventory. And so your job, in effect, is really, how do you shift this line? How do you bend the curve in a way that allows you to reduce your inventory from the levels that you have here, where you have an okay availability rate, into what you're seeing here as having higher availability rate? How do you do that? And so the idea is that you segment your inventory from a Pareto perspective based on Class A, Class B, and Class C. So your idea is really to reduce the inventory levels that you have and then improve the availability rate. And you segment that. So you're not really looking at an aggregate inventory in the same manner. You're segmenting your inventory, and you're seeing what your top 40 sellers are, and that's where you're going to put your investment, and you're increasing your money. And the same thing with the blue items, the Class B items. And you're going to reduce a lot of your C class items, and you want to be okay with having an 80 to 90% availability. Your focus should be mainly, as you're trying to clean up your inventory and as you're trying to help optimize the inventory, focus should be mainly on Class A and Class B, because both of these classes, as you saw here, account for about 80% of your sales. So only 20% of your SKUs, or only 20% of your categories right here will account and see 80%. The rest of it right here, you're going to see 80% of your activities don't really account for more than 20% of your sales. And that's why it's really critical for you to focus on those Class A and B. Class A, you want to aim for 95 to 100% availability rate. When your customers walk into your doors, you want to see 95 to 100% availability rate. And with Class B items, you want to target 90 to 95%. And Class C, 80 to 90%, because you want to be okay with reducing significantly your inventory holding in those categories. Now, as you clean up, 6 months into this process, as you clean up your inventory, as you begin to really have a nice grip on the entire inventory process, you could start getting aggressive with your parameters and with your benchmark and say, you know what, Class A, I will not be happy with anything less than 99%. Or in the same thing with Class B, you can say, I don't want to be anywhere less than 97%. And the same thing really with Class C. So your job, really, when you think about what we're trying to accomplish here, is to bend this curve as you look at the relationship between what you have on hand versus the availability. So this is the overall concept. Now, the question, really, the million-dollar question here is, how are you going to be able to do this? How are you going to segment your inventory? What are the steps that you can take to help with that? And I came up with really a 6-step process that has helped us reduce our working capital by 20% and improve our availability rates. The 6-step process. The first really step, as mentioned earlier, is to take full advantage of this principle, this amazing principle that Vilfredo Pareto came up with, because really this principle has applications in total quality management that was adapted from the 50s all the way to the 80s. And then later on, Lean Six Sigma management principles were adapting this. In fact, the Defense Department in the US in the 70s adapted the ABC classification. So take full advantage of this system and help yourself and your team get the right product at the right time, the things that really mean. And how do you do that? This is really basic, simple calculations. I showed you here earlier my system, and basically what you're trying to do is really account for the percent of sales that you have for the item, and then begin accumulating that percentages. And then the rest of it, you're just indexing and then calculating the percentage of this item. And then you could create a formula here, and you could say, 40% is going to be Class A, 40% of my sales are going to be Class A. From 40 to 80% are going to be Class B, and anything above 80% are going to be all Class C. So this process and this step is sort of easy once you have your data and once you have your sales historical data, and you want to make sure that you're looking at historical data as such. And then the next step in the process is that you want to identify how much dead and excess inventory that you have today. And chances are you do have dead and excess inventory, especially if you're letting your managers or district managers, store managers, district managers order for you, and then your inventory or your back office team is spot checking that stuff. We have tried that, and it was a complete disaster. We ended up with 90% excess inventory at any given time as a result of that, because then you create, if you have 30 doors, you're creating 30 different ways of ordering, 30 different ways of variabilities, and that increases your variability, and that makes it really difficult for you to manage a system. So chances are you have it, and even if you have a centralized place of ordering, if you're not adapting a system like this, you'll have excess inventory. And so being able to identify, being able to see what excess inventory you have is going to help you a great deal. So I'm going to share with you the system that we have in that allowed us to view our excess inventory and have a different perspective and really have that visibility in there. So this is here is what I call an excess inventory view. All right, so this right here is our view that we have for an excess inventory. And this looks less prettier than the other dashboards because this is not a dashboard per se, that this is informational and transactional stuff almost that you can export to Excel and then begin your process. But basically, this is a view that allows you the ability to select what location you're looking for. In this particular example, I'm looking at a specific location, and then I am able to see the accessories that I have in there, and then the excess quantities that I have in that particular store, and the class of those accessories. And then I'm also able to see what devices that they have in class and what class they are. So the thing about excess inventory is that what defines an excess inventory? How do you know what defines and what constitutes an excess inventory? And really that very definition, what you choose to define it, is what's going to dictate the outcome of how many items that you have in excess inventory. As a general rule of thumb, I consider anything above 90 days to be an excess inventory as far as I'm concerned in the wireless business and your accessories. Anything that has not sold in the last 90 days should be considered excess. And then you can get more aggressive with that definition as you start cleaning up that process. You could start saying, you know what, anything that hasn't sold above 60 days, and then you could go above 30 days. And so you're getting more aggressive over time as you define what excess inventory looks like. So, and what I really like about this system that we have here is that I am able to choose the period that I want to look at in terms of accessory sales period, so that I can recognize and build my calculations of excess quantities based on the period that I want. You know, sometimes you want the last month, sometimes you want your sales period to be 4 months, whatever it is. You know better than anyone your business, and that's why you want to have the flexibility and the dynamic options that we have built here, allowing us to define based on accessory sales and based on device sales. And then the other cool thing that we built is allowing, you know, by definition, when I was talking about excess quantities, maybe you want to treat different classes of inventory differently. Maybe you want to leave your stores the class A item. When you start beginning your transfers project, you want to leave class A items in a particular door. You want to leave them with 45 days. And this is, you're going to see that updating, and then you're going to, and that number will change and update automatically based on what you want to leave your doors with as you begin your transfer and rebalancing activities. And you can do the same thing with class B items. You know, maybe you want to leave the store with 21 days. You want to make sure that you're very conservative with your transfer numbers when you first start out. You can choose 60 days across the board, because the last thing that you want to do is begin identifying excess quantities and then start transferring them out of the store to a different location or to your warehouse, and then ending up having to order the same item for that specific store again. So be conservative with the numbers that you choose. And this is right here, I chose 60 days across the board for this specific location. And it tells me that this location has these excess quantities. And then I'm able to, after that, really dig into what quantities are those. And then sort of looking at this example shows me that in this particular location, they have 34 items that are more for class C items that are more than 60 days enough. And as it loads, you're able to see exactly what those items are. So for example, I am able to see that in this particular location, Type C lightning wall charger, they have an excess quantity of 15, and then the same thing with the car chargers, Type C 14, and another case, an example of that, they have to. So you're able to then transfer, and you're able to look at those and say, you know what, I'm going to see which locations need that, or I'm going to bring that to the warehouse and then begin my redistribution process as such. And you will see that you really need a very powerful business intelligence solution that allows you that kind of flexibility and this dynamism that you see, where you're able to just put whatever days you want and define what excess looks like for you. And Excel is not capable of handling that. And I'll share with you later on why Excel isn't able to handle this kind of flexibility that you need in your system. So back to our steps. So we now have finished your classifying your inventory, and then now you're identifying what inventory you have as excess. And once you have identified that, you want to make sure that you're either transferring between your stores or you're writing off inventory. Which inventory you're writing off, your purchasing team will know exactly what to write off, because these are end-of-life inventory, dead items that are no longer active, that you can't really do anything with. You write them off, you can sell them online, throw them, whatever you want to do with them, but you want to write them off so that your inventory is clean and active. And the things that are still active inventory, but it's considered excess in that specific location, you want to begin transferring between your doors. And what we have really noticed, we created a tool that allowed us, the thing of how do you transfer between stores? If you have, especially if you have a lot of locations, one way to do it is that you have your inventory team drive around these stores and pick them up. Another way to do it is have it be shipped. And then the most efficient way and best way, in my opinion, is as your district manager is moving from location A to location B, let them transfer those items. The tricky part is You want to give and empower your district managers to have access and visibility to which store has excess items and which store has an item needed, and be able to do that without going back to your inventory team, without let the field team handle that, so that you're quickly cycling through your inventory. And we built a nice tool that we called it the DM transfer table. And the DM transfer tool, the district manager transfer tool, for both accessories and devices. And this tool is really cool. It allows the district manager or your district manager and training person or your field team who are going from, they're already visiting your stores, you might as well put that visit to use and make sure that you're minimizing your shipping costs by doing so. So in this particular tool, moving from location and then move into. So you could select location 109 in this particular example is selected, going to a location B, in this case 112. And so it tells you what items this location has excess that this store needs. And the cool part is if you actually change the location, if you change, it updates automatically. So if I select here, if I go from 109 to 101 instead of 112, the excess quantities that 109 has, the things that you can pull from, it's going to change based on the needs of the store that's receiving. So this is one of my favorite tools that we have built that have really helped us reduce our inventory significantly. And it created so much value, so much so that sometimes our sales team would be trying to sell an item and then their district manager is right visiting them and saying, hey, I got you some items, and they would be surprised because this is an item that they were actually trying to sell. So imagine the value that's created for you in that process. And the same really thing that goes for device, the device transfer. We're able to select which location you're going from and which locations you're going to. And it's the same concept. This location has 2 excess items of 1 device and 1. And then these are all the excess items. Again, the same concept with accessories. It is only going to recommend what this location, only going to list the things that this location needs. And you could do the same thing and constantly do that. This transfer tool has been amazing and has really helped us significantly. And one thing that I have learned about creating tools is that if you don't, even with creating this first, when you're adopting this new system, change is really difficult for a lot of people. And your district manager and your team members are probably not used to having to be reminded of, oh, okay, I need to transfer items as I am visiting stores. And so we found that early on, there was no adoption of the system, only had a few early adopters, but the masses were not adopting them. And I have learned from the management guru, Peter Drucker, who said, if you can't measure it, you're not going to change it. So we built a transfer reporting tool that allows us the opportunity to look at and say, okay, which district is executing transfers on devices, and which district is executing transfers on accessories, and how many. And this is a nice view that allows us the opportunity to really hold districts accountable, hold the field team accountable, so that they are executing. You can give them a quota on the execution of transfers, especially in the early months of you creating this process, of you beginning this big project of cleaning up your inventory to reduce your working capital. If you want to make sure that you're monitoring that and that you're holding your team accountable so that they're executing it. After a few weeks or a few months, it becomes second-hand nature. And this is why these projects and these tools are not really, you can't finish them in 1 week or 10 days. It will take months for you to execute these projects. And if you don't have the tools, it'll take years for actually finishing and executing that project. So this is a tool that has helped us expedite the process of cleaning up our inventory and improving availability rates. So these are the first 3 steps. And then the 4th step is really begin reduction of your inventory on hand while monitoring the availability rates. And so availability rates, I'm going to share with you real quick the view that we have on availability rates so that you could see what we use to help us with the availability rates. I have here something called stock out. And by the way, when I say stock out, I am using the term availability rate and stock out interchangeably. So if it's a stock out, it's the same thing as availability rate. If something has an availability rate of 95%, its stock out number is 5%. And I use them interchangeably. In this graph, I am looking at device at a stock out level, and I am measuring only stock out. And so this is what I mean by saying monitor your stock out levels and your availability rate while reducing your inventory on hand. And I'm going to get back to this way of monitoring your availability rates and your stock out levels. I'll get to that shortly. But you can begin reduction of your inventory once you have done the first 3 steps. And you could start with reducing your purchasing budget by 10% to your purchasing team. You can let them know, hey, this is only, you're only able to use this X amount of money. And that could be 10% less than your average, than the average of the last 5 to 6 months. And then slowly reduce your purchasing budget until you have to constantly monitor your availability rate or your stock out levels as you're doing that. And then the 5th step is adopt a dynamic ordering system and a transferring tool between the locations. I just shared with you the transfer tool, but transfer can only get you so much. A dynamic ordering system, the dynamic ordering system, which will be shown in another separate video. It's not the discussion of this video, but it will be shown. I'll show you in a video called Dynamic Demand Planning and Forecasting. Without changing your ordering mechanism, you will end up back where you are. You cannot fix a problem by using the same solution that created the very problem. You don't want to miss that dynamic and demand planning video because there's a lot of cool features that we have developed to help us with that. And then the last step in the process, the last step is what I call a post-mortem analysis of your stock out on Class A and Class B items with your purchasing team and with your sales team. So you want to constantly look at what happens when your Class A and when your Class B items are not getting into your target range. You need to do a post-mortem analysis and then be actively asking questions between your purchasing and ops team and your sales team and get their feedback so that you're able to see what needs to be done. In a post-mortem analysis, I shared with you here earlier this view, a device stock out view, that allows me a significant amount of details so I can know exactly what device went out of stock, what is the class of that device, and for how long it went out of stock, so exactly what days and how did that happen. So a post-mortem analysis view is where you're really, it achieves 2 objectives. And the first one is you're monitoring your availability rate so that you could see a specific pattern in a specific period, and then you could change your process accordingly. And the second one is you're able to bridge the gap between your field and sales team and your purchasing team. Oftentimes, you'll have your sales team saying, you know what, I'm running out of stocks very fast. I'm not getting what I want. And then you'll ask your purchasing team and they'll say, well, we are getting them what they want. We are getting them what they need. It's just that they're not selling fast enough. You want to make sure that you have a system that allows you to distinguish facts from fiction, and it allows you the opportunity to keep everybody honest and then make sure, it's not that the team is lying, it's just that they're so in the trenches that it gets really overwhelming sometimes that they're not really able to see clearly. And so you want to help them see clearly what's happening. And this system allows you to do just that. And the idea of noticing, the first objective, this idea of constantly monitoring and seeing where you are, I can, in this particular example, if I want to look at one location and then I want to see what are my stock out levels for that location in a specific period. And this is what I mean by saying constantly monitoring that. You could select the period that you're looking at, the beginning, for example, in this case, I want to say I'm looking at the last 2 months and I want to see my stock out levels, okay? And then you could begin to say, okay, how are we doing on Class A items? Well, this right here, Class A items are, the stock out level is 5.35%. And if you remember from my target here, I said 95%. So a stock out level of 5% means that I have 95% availability of Class A. which is good. Not really as good as I would like. I want to see that go, as we're now at the point where we are making progress that my target is 0. So 100% availability on Class A items across the board. And you will see that right here, as of August 18th, this location has managed to do 100% availability. And what I said, that this view allows you to achieve 2 objectives. The one objective that this idea of monitoring it, knowing your patterns, like when you start seeing this chart and you get this level of detail, it allows you the opportunity to see that you have peaks and valleys of your stock out level. And, interestingly enough, this allows you a pattern recognition and allows you an idea to, like, why ask the question, why are we peaking in stock outs on those specific days? Is there something that is a common between these peaks? And it turns out in our case, the one day that we were stocking out and peaking was on Mondays. And what was really interesting is that on Mondays, the team would have our team is processing order twice a week. And it could be different for you. Maybe you're processing order once a week or 5 times a week or once every other week. Whatever that process is for you, you're going to be able to tweak by looking at how you are monitoring that and tweaking that. So we realized that we're peaking on Mondays because our Thursday order, which is an emergency ordering mechanism that we have in place to make sure that the sales team has enough for their weekend sales. It turns out that we were not ordering enough on the emergency days, and so we are modifying that, and we're modifying our the way that we are placing that order, which I'll share with you how that looks like in the demand planning video. But this is really the cool thing, and it allows you to monitor that and see. So now we're changing the days on hand after having seen these peaks and valleys. And it could be different for a different location. It could be different for a specific district, whatever it is. And so and the other one was the idea of bridging the gap and having a post-mortem analysis with your sales team. The other day I had a meeting with my district managers, and one of them brought to my attention that they are running out of a specific device. In the past, it would have been really difficult for me to identify what that device was, or like to validate any of that feedback, and maybe we would have overcorrected. But in this particular example, like, I was able to quickly come to this system and figure out exactly what had happened. And I could see that in this specific example, that in this particular location on class B, that there were some issues with a specific device. And it was really this device right here. I'm able to validate the concern. And then you look here, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, and then the same thing here. So they were saying that they're running out of stock. And this allows me an opportunity to go in here and look at the activities, what had happened, what's been refunded, what's been transferred. This is what I mean by a post-mortem analysis, that you're going back historically and you're trying to really see and ask your inventory and ops team what exactly happened and why are we experiencing that. In this way, you're creating a cadence, and if that cadence is not followed, it's easy for you to pinpoint that and be able to identify areas of improvement. And so I have here, I'm going to share with you Class A items. Let's see. Class A items for the last 30 days company-wide, the availability on them is 97%, which is really in the range that I had set the target for our team. In the last 30 days, our stock out levels were 2.5%. It's a 97% availability. It really means that if you were to go into any of our stores, you're going to find this 97% of the time, 97.4% of the time, what you're looking for. And then on Class B items, 5%, which is a 95. So this is in the upper range of what I'm looking for here on Class B items. And lastly, Class C items, you have 10% stock out levels, which is consistent in the upper range of what I was looking for. And that was for devices, and I have the same thing for accessories. And accessories, the team is doing better. And when you look at Class A accessories, you are seeing a 1.28% stock out level. it means that 98.8% of the time, our customers were able to come to our doors in this specific period and get exactly what they need. And you're able to actually go in every morning and every day, and then you can highlight on the last day, and then you could see which locations are stocking out. You can click on that specific location, and then you're able to see exactly what units are going out. Liquid glass is going out, and then you can see the pattern. Any peaks in here, it means the unit is out of stock. A slot line means the unit is not out of stock. And so this is really the 6-step process that we use at CP4L that have helped us navigate the challenges that we face as wireless retailers, and that allowed us to get in reducing our inventory on hand, working capital tied to inventory by more than 20%, and still at the same time improving our availability rate or stock out levels. And final thoughts on this system, and final thoughts on when you're looking at your inventory and improving your operations, you want to make sure that you're using a powerful business intelligence tool. And it's beyond Excel and beyond Excel capabilities, because really think about this idea of how much data you're going to need to create this kind of reporting structure. And think about if you had 40 stores like me, and then you have 10,000 SKUs in your inventory like me. So that means you have 400,000 rows that you need to update on a daily basis, because you got to make sure that this information is updated on a daily basis. 400,000 rows. Now, and if you're doing that throughout the year, 365 days, that's 146 million rows. Excel can't handle that. And in fact, it doesn't have enough rows to cover a fraction of that. Probably has 1 million rows capabilities, or 10 million. 146 million. So a business intelligence tool and a system that allows you the dynamic abilities to do that is much more powerful than Excel will ever be to help you get. And this is the kind of stuff that you're going to have to do. And this is the level of calculation that you're going to have to do to bend the curve from having to hold $35,000 or $40,000 worth of inventory in every location, and at best you're getting 80%. These are the things that you're going to do to bend the curve and to focus and utilize the principles that have been developed by Pareto and the modern engines of business intelligence tools that we have built at Cell Phones for Life. I hope that you have enjoyed this session and have learned something about how to optimize inventory. I look forward to sharing with you our inventory demand planning and forecasting system, a dynamic system that we have built that has helped us make sure that we don't get back into this really old, but not to switch back from here to here. You're going to need to make sure that your inventory and forecasting system so that you're not going in the opposite direction. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.